years of the day since you got the job at Coleraine. Take us back to the end of your playing career. You're having to retire early. What does that feel like to sort of having to cut your career short by so many years?
Yeah, I remember it well. I remember it like yesterday. 29 years of age, and I had probably 4 good years at Linfield, but a couple of them were sort of injury ravaged, and one of the injuries was a cruciate, another one was a hip operation on cartilage, and it didn't go as fluently as probably as I wanted it to go, and ended up needing another operation on it. And having come back from that, I came back to play again. I think played 6 or 7 games towards the end of the season and was offered a new 1-year contract to go again, but I just wasn't confident probably in the hip, and I suppose I was quite also fortunate in relation to how I'd been looked after in the previous couple of years at Linfield as well, and what I didn't want to be was, I suppose, a mercenary or whatever else. So I think rolling it all into one, and particularly I think in the last couple of games that season, even though back and playing, there was one game in particular I remember where I had a wee change of direction and the hip sort of gave a wee nip, and I thought, I need to be careful here. So I suppose the decision sadly, had to be made, and probably from a sporting background and a PE teacher as well, it was one of those where, I suppose I always had aspirations of playing till I was 38, 39 and being that last man standing sort of, and for it to all change at 29 was harsh, to be fair, and probably hard to take, and it did take a bit of adjusting.
And did you know straight away that you wanted to stay in football and go into management, or did that sort of catch you, blindsided?
No, I always probably had aspirations of doing that. When I hurt my knee when I was 21, I think I did my other cruciate when I was 21, and I remember at that stage I was up to B licence, and I went and got my A licence done in that year that I was out injured, and I think I was one of the youngest people to have it at that stage. So, and again, probably with a teaching background, it was always something that I aspired to do, as you say, but I just think it came 10 years earlier than I wanted it to.
Take us back to whenever you're manager at Limavady and you start maybe hearing that Coleraine might be an option. What sort of emotions are going through at that stage?
I don't think there was ever rumours or anything else that goes with it. I remember the first year at Limavady in particular, Paul Owens was one of the players and played under me, and I think we went into Limavady then, and Trevor McKendry came with me, and they'd finished something like 15th out of 17 teams in the championship, and in one season we turned it around and finished second in that first season. So it was a heck of a turnaround, and did it the way we wanted to do it, I suppose. And the second season it started well also. And I think again we were sitting first or second in the league and going really, really well. And then all of a sudden, I think it was really, really quickly. Just all of a sudden there was an opportunity here. I think there was a meeting on the, I can't try and remember. I think we had a match or something on the Saturday, and I think it was Hugh Wade and a few other ones called round to the house at a quick interview, a quick discussion basically, and it was pretty much announced on that Saturday afternoon as we were travelling. I think away to Banbridge it was with Limavady. And
when you started at Limavady, did you think you'd escalate to a top side, so quickly, or did you think you were going to?
You aspire to, yeah, because I think when I started out playing, I played for Ballymoney United and then Moyola Park, and then got my chance with Ballymena and then on to Linfield, and I remember playing for Ballymoney and playing for Moyola Park and looking on at envy every Saturday afternoon when you come in after the game. Those games kicked off at 2 o'clock and the Premier League kicked off at 3, so you're always in the clubhouse after watching the goals and final score and whatever else, and wanting a taste of that, and wanting a bit of that. And I think then when you get that as a player, I suppose then when you go into management, it's why should it be any different? I think you tell every player in that change room to reach for the stars and to push as high as they can. So I think it's important that I do that as well.
Obviously when things are going well, it feels great, and then there's dips in form all the time, no matter what team you're part of. What does that feel like, sort of when it sort of catches you?
Yeah, we had that initial first end to the season when it went in. We got good impact coming in and got safe very quickly and had a nice strong finish to the season. And the first part of the next season went quite well also. But with that, it then became, I suppose, apparent about where we were in relation to the league, in relation to other teams and what they'd built and all that goes with it. And I suppose the foundation of where we wanted to get to wasn't there. And I think we knew from day one that we always knew there was going to be a lot of changes needed.
And compare when you're a player and you're going through a bit of dip in form to when you're a manager and your team's going through a dip in form. What can you learn from being a player when that's the case, and what caught you by surprise in management?
I think you learn a lot as a player, and as I said, particularly the empathy side of things in relation to, sadly, we've had players here who've had big injuries. Our trainers had a cruciate. Lyndon's been out 2 or 3 times with a bad one. James has had a cruciate as well. And I think particularly the 4 injuries that I went through, and any player in that change room, in any change room, will tell you that it's the most horrible experience in sport that you'll go through. To be part of a team sport and a team ethic and all the fun and the crack and everything that encompasses a week in the life of a footballer at such at Irish League level, to have all that whipped away from you for a year is really, really hard to take. So I think the ability to empathise with those guys in relation to, I've been there not once, not twice, but 3 or 4 times, and I think that can be a help. And I just think the experience of playing and the experience of knowing the different grounds and the different players and the different places is helpful. But we all know nothing can prepare you for different aspects of it, and there has been moments of it. I suppose in the first couple of years here, there was loads of players that were older than me that were playing for Coleraine, and you're trying to, I suppose, gain that respect and hold that respect and all that goes with it in relation to the different challenges that you meet with, or that you're met with. Sorry.
And with that comes, especially when you're potentially younger, comes challenges in the changing room. Do you always find that because you were a player, you found the change room atmosphere easier?
No, to be honest with you, and I've said this in numerous interviews, I think qualifying as a teacher and being a teacher and dealing with parents and pupils at secondary school level and conflict negotiation and all that goes with it at that level is superb practice for being able to deal in a change room as well, because no matter what it may be in a workplace, a business place, a school or a football club, you're dealing with people first and foremost and their footballers second. So I think the skills learnt and developed through school and through some of the, I suppose, scenarios you find yourself in at school are things that are very fitting and very apt to be able to deal in a change room.
Last week when I was chatting to Colin, he talked about the things he noticed about you in your first time with us, and then when he came back, he thought you were a better manager after your time in St Mirren. How do you compare your first, batch of years with us, and then since you've come back?
I think the key thing is, and you want to see it, and again, it's probably the same for all the young players and any player moving through their career. I think you want to see progression, and I hope as a manager from the early days and the tough days that I've learnt a lot. I hope from at my end of my first spell at Coleraine that I was getting stronger and stronger. And again, you can only hope. And I know that the experience in Scotland, and I've said it before, is worth 4 or 5 years of experience in relation to the trauma and the amount of stuff that I had to go through that year to try and keep St Mirren up. So all those experiences can only be good, and they're banked. And as I say, the key thing, it's like any player in there, you just want to keep developing, keep pushing yourself and keep trying to push yourself as far as you can. Obviously
with both clubs, you've poured a huge amount of yourself into them, or even with Limavady. Like, for fans, they just potentially see you on a Saturday, guiding the team along. What does it feel like to carry that? So you know what the groundsman's doing, all these different things, and you're trying to juggle all those different things. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and also there's a lot of expectation at times as well, because for the community, particularly at times like this, there's a real conscientious aspect where that fans can't be here. That possibly if they're dipping to pay £7 or £8 a Saturday to watch the game, that you want to make sure it's a good experience for them. Yes, it's not going to be the same as being here, but in the same stretch, you want to, to me there is a big responsibility to try and do that. But I think also the league has evolved over the last 10 years that I've been there, and at the start, it's full of part-time teams, and I thought, particularly towards the end of that time when we won the Cup in 2018, we'd probably grew a squad and got to a point where we were as strong as any of the teams in the league. And then you look how the league has evolved from them with the Larns, the Glentorns. You just look at this previous transfer window that's just gone, and you look at, I suppose, the gulf that could develop between some clubs. It's quite scary from that point of view, and the ability, I suppose, we've had good success in the last couple of years, and it makes me hungry for more, and you keep driving that to the players that you want even more of it. But the ability to do that has now been made, I suppose, a lot harder by the raising of the bar of Linfield going full time now this summer, and Crusaders, Glentoran, Larne all being full time as well. So when you have a mix, I suppose, of 4 full time teams in the league and 8 teams who aren't, it makes any achievement even tougher. And in the last couple of years, we'd rose the bar so much that it was top 3 or top 2 was an expectation, and now when you name 4 full-time teams, if they all do their jobs right, we should be finishing 5th and beyond, if you know what I mean. And I think that's the joy of where we're at this point in time, that we've really enjoyed in the past few years punching above our weight. That task has been made harder, but for us now, we've got to really crack on and try and ensure we keep doing it. And one of the things that sort of spans across your tenure, across all the clubs you've managed, is your faith in youth, and you've brought young people through. How tempting is it in your position to just go for experience all the time, or just try and get as much money out of the board to spend as much as you can, instead of looking back towards the squad that's been developed in academies or younger players?
I think when you talk about budget, I'm probably as bad as the board in relation to the budget. And again, because you have that vested interest, because you're from the area, and because you absolutely want to do right with the club, I'd be as sore on the budget as the board would be in relation to making sure that we're careful and match balls are a big thing of mine. I hate losing a match ball. They're 70 or 80 quid, and count them in, count them out. And I think it's all those wee things I think that have a massive impact from that point of view. But the young players, and there was a real good cohort that came through that was a massive building block to move us into the place that we're in. And I suppose it moves two ways, where I have no problem throwing in, Adam Mulligan made his debut at 16, Brad at 17, and Lyndon at 16 or 17, and Jamie McGonigal the same. But to me, they were all good enough. And the key thing that we must do also here now is make sure that we've got that conveyor belt of players coming. If I'm being honest, it was easier throwing those ones in because we were sitting eighth or 6th in the league around that time, 6th, 7th, 8th in the league, and there probably wasn't the pressure. I think because of where we've grown to now as a club, it's possibly harder to throw a younger player in, or they need to be better, because number one, the standard of player that we've got in the squad now is far better than it was 5 years ago, and number two, the level of expectation is far higher, where if we are putting somebody in, they've got to hit the ground running, because we need 3 points every Saturday.
If you were to look back at the last 10 years, what has stuck out as a major highlight, and what has stuck out as something that has maybe disappointed you the most?
There's been a few disappointments. Probably the first Irish Cup final against Linfield, where it was the dreaded one, where you just feared that we were maybe too young for it, and we all knew it was part of the learning process to win it the next year. But it still hurts with that crowd and everything else that was there. There was a League Cup final early days when at the very, very start against Crusaders, it was possibly quite similar as well. And you just hate losing finals. There's nothing. It's brilliant getting to a final, but there's nothing worse than losing a final. And I think the positive aspects are obviously that probably the league run as well as that Irish Cup win. That whole season, and that particularly the second part of the season was immense, I think, for fans and anybody associated with the club, and it was just topped off with the emotions of that day. And then probably the Maribor one this year as well, because I don't think any of us seen it coming. We'd earned the shot at it with the big win here in the first round, and we were going there to enjoy ourselves, but to really go and try and stress a team and really go and try and have a rattle at a team, and it just all fell into place in the night, and the way we won it, and the scenes and everything else that you were privileged to be a part of as well. Again, it's probably memories that will live with us for a long time, and it's probably the sad bit is probably just that supporter aspect of it, where the Irish Cup one was enjoyed by everybody, but sadly the Maribor one is one which you'll always look at with particularly the away leg, or that away leg aspect of it, and go, you've got to imagine, even if we only had 200 or 300 or 100 fans there, it would have been memories for life for people. Yeah, and I don't expect you to have a crystal ball, but where do you see the club, and not necessarily just yourself, your role in the club, but the club going in the next 10 years? I think 10 years is very hard to predict, and the one thing from 10 years ago since I've been here is we've always preached about the pitch and trying to do something that really gives us a foundation. And when you look, I suppose, at the few years that Cliftonville had, really up around the top when they changed to a 3G pitch, and Crusaders have done it the same. And for us, fighting budgets of these big teams is going to be immense moving forward. And I think that real stability of a club in relation to having something here that's at the hub of the community, I think it just enhances the identity of what we've built already. So it's been a long 10 years in relation to waiting for that. As Colin mentioned last week, we're hopeful that ideally this summer we should start to get movement, hopefully, to be turning sods and making big changes with that. And to me, that's the next step that allows us to start to grab onto the coattails of these teams and keep pushing.
I think fans will allow me to speak on behalf of them and say huge thank you for the last 10 years and all the memories that you've brought the community and the fans, and we look forward to the years ahead. So thanks, Oran.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.